Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Coram and Ed Carson with a breakdown of the action in today's session, Monday, September 9th, where we saw a rebound after last week's rout, but we still want to see more improvement, Ed.
Yeah, it's nice to get a bounce, but it's just one day. I want to take a look at a few stocks: FanDuel, Parent, Flutter Entertainment, Axon Enterprise, and General Dynamics.
Okay, well, we will analyze those three stocks, but first, let's take a look at the major indexes. The Nasdaq today up almost 1.2%, same for the S&P 500 and Dow. The Russell 2000 small caps lagging today up about 0.3%. So, up 1.2%. So, out of context, it seems like a big gain, but then you put it in context of what we saw last week in an inside day, still a lot of improvement that's needed for this market to get back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, huge losses. It was the worst week for the Nasdaq in over 2 years. It was the worst week for the S&P and the Dow in over a year. On Friday, the Nasdaq fell decisively below the low of its follow-through day. I think it might still be below the low of the follow-through day
Mm.
after today's gain. So that one especially needs a lot of work. The S&P is still below the 50-day line. So, that one needs at least a good day just to start feeling a little better here. Dow is in a little better shape, um, and so that one held the 50-day line. Uh, the Russell is still a little bit down below there, but yeah. So, I mean, it's just like it's not. That one was not a huge day. That one is sort of mediocre there. The Dow looks a lot like RSP. Also is that RSP, which is the equal weight ETF there. So that
Mhm.
one bounced back about to the 21-day line. So they're fairly similar. I guess in general, I guess the positive you can take away is that it does feel like there's a lot of stocks that are doing pretty well. Like that are setting up. And so if the indexes can get back on track, that there would be a lot of things to buy. But inside days, one day after some really heavy selling, yeah,
Mhm.
I don't think people should be too excited yet.
Yeah, I mean, we were at oversold levels, so we're getting a bounce here. But let's see if there's more to come with an actual short-term change in trend here. I think you're definitely right to point out that 50-day line here for the S&P 500 coinciding with 5,500. I think that's a key level to watch. And so we'll see, maybe these non-tech areas can produce some actionable entries, although we'll have to see. I mean, it seems like tech did participate in this rebound today, Ed, but what are your thoughts on the rotations that we're seeing underneath the surface?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely you're seeing defensive growth doing better. There are some techs, like some software names, that are doing reasonably well.
Palantir
Palantir. I mean,
had a
nothing like getting
great
added.
day.
Yeah, nothing like added to the S&P 500. But there are some other names that are doing
Yeah.
pretty well. So that's an area that had been sitting out for a while that is coming in. But yeah, I mean, it's just in general, tech is not doing very well, and there's a lot of things that have been weighing on it. So I mean, yeah, I
Mhm.
had a day today, inside day, just a lot of damage. So, I mean, that's where a lot of the other sectors. If you look at the sectors that are close to highs, there tend to be in non-tech areas. I mean, they're XLF, XLI, XLV, XLU. They're all doing reasonably well here. Finding support. Either the
Mhm.
utilities are basically there in real estate. So a lot of things that are doing well, and there's other ones too. So definitely, you don't want to be thinking I'm just going into AI chips, because that's a way to get
Right.
battered. I mean, that doesn't mean that they aren't going to bounce back, but you can really suffer a lot of damage in your portfolio if you don't listen to the market. And if you
Mhm.
don't want to buy these other sectors, well, then you want to step out and go to cash. You don't just, I mean, those are your options. I think is you have to be looking at what is working, and listen to the market that way.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at Flutter. This is FLUT, as you mentioned, parent of FanDuel, and we are back into pro football and college football season. And this stock today up 2.7%, clearing some short-term highs.
Yeah, some nice action here. So you can sort of treat this sort of like a handle early entry. I think on a weekly chart, there was a 3 weeks tight in there. So that gives it extra reason in there. I mean, it wasn't not much of a shakeout, but held up really well. In when a lot of other growth names struggling. A lot of attention's been on DraftKings, but I think Flutter, now that it's really more trading in the U.S. a lot more. I think this is actually a much bigger operation, FanDuel, than DraftKings. So you look at those fundamentals, turning profit. Well, the profit growth has returned. It's still a little spotty. The revenue growth has accelerated for several quarters, for a few quarters, and so it's nice trends here. And look, gaming is still doing very well, and yeah, so this one showed a lot of nice action, relative strength, not at highs, but at least clearing the recent highs. So
Mhm.
nice action here.
Yeah, and I think going back the past almost 18 months, it's been a lot of time trading under the area right around where it formed that 3 weeks tight. So it's getting above a lot of its prior resistance. So it seems like next stop could be 230 if it can keep up the momentum. But are you going to bet on this one, Ed?
Yeah, I don't like the wedgy nature of the handle. And that was one thing about it, is that especially on the bottom there, I'd like another shakeout. I mean, that's just sort of my tendency. I mean, and it could still happen. I mean, it doesn't have to happen today, but I like a lot of the things about it. The fundamentals are strong. This is a growth stock that's not in tech per se. So I think there's a lot of reasons why people should be looking at this name.
We also looked at Axon on IBD Live this morning, finishing the day up 2.8% in elevated turnover. Had that really strong reaction to earnings. And if you go back to early August when we saw a lot of damage in the market, we were looking for stocks that were holding up better than the broad market. And this was definitely one of them, Ed. So we've been keeping tabs on it since that earnings reaction and now setting up a new entry here with support at some key levels on the chart.
Yeah, and it's had really strong moves with the last earnings reports, but then it doesn't make a whole lot of move after those earnings reports. I mean, it did keep going for a while this last time, but you can sort of see it went sideways, and it sort of leveled off. So maybe this is actually a good time to get in it. Certainly a place where you could have added on to it. Bouncing off the 21-day line, maybe just a small position. Again, if the market weakens, there's a good chance this one's going to struggle again as well. You don't know. Will this continue to go sideways until the next earnings report? Certainly could. So, but it's a place where you could do that. It has a lot of areas. Yeah, it's got the tasers, but it's also got body cameras that has document, video things, archiving. Now they're doing AI plays where it's just like, we'll write your police reports for you, or at least get a first draft. Well,
Hmm.
so I'm sure cops who probably didn't get into the business to write police reports. And so I'm sure they're excited about the idea of doing that. So a
Yeah,
lot of
that's
nice action
interesting.
here. Yeah. So that one's coming in. That was one thing that I think is contributing. That, the earnings growth wasn't tremendous the last quarter, but I think that's one reason why the stock surged, is that they were talking about that new AI tool that's still in testing phase, I believe, but
Hmm.
or just in pilot program. But some nice revenue growth that it's had, and it can be a little lumpy at times because of some purchases that happen with big law enforcement agencies, but has
Right.
really strong levels over time.
Mhm. All right. Well, compelling next chapter, perhaps, for the growth story here unfolding. And let's round things out with a look at General Dynamics, ticker GD, closing above the round number at 300. We like taking a look at those psychological round numbers. The gain of 3% today, and it cleared a lot of resistance right around that century mark times three.
Yeah, and it looks like, I mean, this is a flat base, so technically it doesn't have a handle, but you can sort of see a handle in the last couple of weeks. So bouncing off the 21-day line, I think it certainly could have been actionable as it was sort of getting over 300. And it's still, look, if you wait to the buy point, I mean, it's just like a sliver away. That's not really a problem if that's what you prefer to do. I like the volume bars, like, yeah, there was a negative one on Friday, but otherwise we've seen a lot of blue spikes there. That's nice because volume hasn't always been there with some stocks that have been moving. I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, volume can be messy, but it's still nice to see some signs that institutions are coming in. This is almost a classic defensive growth name. It's defense stock, and it's growing. I mean, it's not. It's sort of getting out of single digit growth and getting into double digit for a while here, and so that's nice. That's one thing, is that and a couple of years ago when the Ukraine war struck and some of them moved, it's like, well, they weren't really growing that well. Now there's starting to be a little bit of growth in there that's a little bit more impressive. The earning stability is really tight, really, really low. So there's a lot to like about this. This has been a strong sector, even with some losses that aerospace took in the last week or two. This is still a top group. And after a pretty shallow consolidation, this one's moving up again.
Mhm. And to your point about the earnings, we're also seeing the recent strength reflected in the earnings line curling up there. So whether you're looking at the earnings line itself or the quarterly numbers there, definitely seeing that improvement. And while the relative strength line isn't at highs, it is getting above its moving averages there. So seeing that short term relative outperformance, Ed.
Yeah, so those are reasons why you could be looking at this area. Aerospace is definitely a place where people should be looking. Despite some of the losses, this has definitely been a leading group sector for a while.
Okay, well, before we wrap, we want to check in on Oracle with earnings out after the close today. The database software giant up over 5%. The early reaction here to earnings. What's your early reaction here, Ed?
I haven't looked at the details, but they beat views, and so it was nice to see there was faster revenue growth, like 8% or so. So it was nice to see that, and so that would be a positive sign. Look, this is one of the big names. Looks like a breakout. This is one of the last tech names that we're going to see for a while. Adobe will be later in the week, so this is really a positive for software. We'll have to take a look to see what they say about cloud software, AI. They also have a conference later this week. So that's something to keep note, is that later on they'll have some stuff. So there might be more things that could be a catalyst, positive or negative. But this is definitely good for the tech sector.
Yes, it is. All right, Ed. Well, a busy couple of weeks, couple of months ahead with lots of headlines to digest. So, thank you so much for breaking all of that down for us today as we take it one day at a time. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more on IBD Live, investors.com/IBD Live. For all those details, we'll see you 10 minutes before the opening bell for all the fun. So, till then, this is Alyssa Coram and Ed Carson, and we'll see you next time.